Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda, and I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep. We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, everyone. Today is the episode everyone's been waiting for, and it's when True Creeps visits Malvern, Iowa.
I'm sure you gasped too, even though you already read the name of the episode.
And you too will want to go to Malvern, Iowa.
Honestly, I think that's accurate.
Accurate. Everyone.
I want to go back.
I do. I want to go back. I want to do an overnight investigation. It's a great place. You have to go.
Yes, I want to do an overnight investigation. Also, more importantly, equally importantly, I want to return to Pizza Ranch.
Oh, no.
Which is a chain of pizza buffets. Delicious. So good. I don't think CC's are here anymore.
And confusing.
Oh, it was confusing as well. But I mean, good. Would eat there again, clearly. We were also just so hungry at this point that, like,
who could know if it was actually good?
Yeah. I mean, one of the best meals I had on our trip was like steak and eggs at a Perkins. So that's the bar where we were living in case you were wondering.
Yes. So as a quick recap, when we actually did our spooky trip a couple weeks ago now, we visited the Elms Hotel first, and we've already talked about that. That's come out. Then we went to Malvern Manor, and we did a quick little investigation there the following day. Then after that, went straight to Villisca, where we didn't sleep for 27-ish hours or so. So it was a spooky trip of everything mashed into 2 days.
Yeah, I do think that one of the interesting things about this trip is just the sheer amount of stuff that we fit into our time there. In a world where we return, buffer times are so thought of and so considered because I think it would make things different.
Much different.
Everything was amazing, life-changing, so good. But I think that things would feel a little bit easier and less, like, intense in a good way.
Yes. And Lindsay and I plan on doing more. And now that we've learned from what we did this time, I think that we're going to be able to do a lot more next time.
Boy, did we. Boy, did we.
So like I said, we traveled to Malvern Manor, and our original episode on Malvern was released in November of 2023. As a reminder, this is when we put Malvern on the map. Now it's a household city name, right?
Of course.
We actually covered this episode as a hint because we knew we were going to Villisca, and we had discovered around that same time that Malvern may have a connection to Villisca.
Yes.
And so the connection was perhaps the person who committed the murders either stayed at Malvern before, or now I'm hearing a couple new theories as to the person staying there after. But that was the connection, and that's why we did the episode originally as a hint. Also, same thing goes for the Elms episode. We did that one as a hint because we knew we were going to Kansas City, and so we'd be super close to it. Now, if you want in-depth discussions of like the history of the building, all the happenings, we suggest going and listening to those specific episodes. So Malvern Manor and the Elms episode. But today, it's going to be our travel to Malvern, so I'm so excited.
Yeah. For today, we're going to talk briefly about how the building has been used, because that's like broad strokes what we need to talk about. The tour we went on with Josh Hurd, and our general impressions of the space. We'll also touch on some corrections that we have based on fresh intel, because the resources that we read last time, it was the blog from the Malvern Manor itself and then other sources on the internet. And so we found out more information. So we're doing a little bit of corrections. So we'll let you know when it's happening. So let's talk what the building was used for. So in the 1870s, it was built by a family as their family home, and then it was sold in 1890. At that point, the new owner added extra rooms, and that's when it expanded to about 10,000 square feet.
It's big, and it's a maze.
It's fucking massive. Yes, it is a maze, which is part of the thing. One of the reasons that why I think it has a scary kind of vibe to it is because you could get lost so easily.
Yes.
So once it was 10,000 square feet, it was then operated as a hotel named the Cottage Hotel. I had a problem with the name of that before, and I still do, because Cottage Hotel doesn't make sense. It's small house, house is basically what it's called. You know what I mean? Like, it's just small house mansion. That doesn't make any sense. That's probably the same joke I made before, but I still don't like it. So the building has changed hands several more times after it was sold to become a hotel. And in that time, it also was a nursing home and a minimum care facility, in addition to being a hotel and someone's home. So compared to the Elms and Villisca, we didn't have as much time here. So we were able to do a tour, but not much else. We did a little bit of exploring afterwards, and we'll talk more about, like, the tour wasn't just like your average ghost tour. So, like, a little more than that. But we weren't able to be as in depth and spend as much time because we were stopping on our way to Villisca.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, when you hear 10,000 square feet, that sounds big, right? Like, your average house is going to be like 2,000 maybe, right? If it's really big, it's bigger than that.
Right.
So you're thinking like 10,000 square feet feels like unfathomable. It is. It's just massive, but it somehow feels even bigger than that when you're inside.
Yes.
Like, it feels almost endless.
It does.
I don't know how to describe it other than that. And, like, we mentioned in our previous episode that Josh Hurd bought the building in May of 2016. He was who gave us the tour. So it was just Josh, Amanda, Nora, and myself. So, like, it was a very intimate tour, which was amazing. And so we got to ask him tons of questions, and he told us lots of stuff. And we loved it. And we also just fucking adored him.
He was great. And just to say how great he was again is we were running late, right? Like, because we were up all night at the Elms, having to get from the Elms to Villisca plus the stop in Malvern. We were running late. It took forever. And I called and said, I know you close at 3. And Josh was so sweet to be like, I'm actually going to be around for a little bit. If you guys want to still come and explore the place, I'm happy to do it. And he totally didn't have to do that. So just props to him. He's passionate about this place. He knows the ins and outs. And he's like a human record keeping book about the patients that were in Malvern Manor. And so he was awesome. If you ever get the chance,
yes,
go visit him, learn about his ghosts, because he loves his ghosts.
Yeah, and he really does. And I would say that, like, when he talks about them and he talks about the place, like, he has proud dad energy to it, right?
Yes,
like, it's like,
yes.
You can tell that, like, while he does do ghost investigations and he is fascinated by it, about the place because of its paranormal elements, like, it is not as though he doesn't care, you know?
Exactly. I've been on ghost tours where they're like almost joking around or like, oh, and this happened and it was so scary. And that is not the vibe that he gives off. It's, here's what happened. You need to know this backstory before I can tell you about who lives in this room currently.
Yes. Yes. There was a lot of respect. And he also has a YouTube channel. It's at Josh Hurd 1981. Definitely go take a look. He has a lot of content of him going through Malvern Manor. So if you want to see, like, people walking through doing investigations, it's an excellent watch.
Yes, yes. And then you could see the layout, like how we're talking about how it's so maze-like.
Mhm.
You can watch him walking through it and you're like, I don't even know how he got to this area.
Yeah, yeah. And the way he walks, I mean, obviously he's there all the time, so it's a little bit more effortless, but he's just like, just so aware, which I find just fascinating. And I mean, you know, he bought it in 2016. We're some 8 years later, and he's still just like enamored with it. And I love that.
Yeah.
So he told us how he came to own the building, which we thought was very interesting. He had been doing a ghost investigation nearby when he met the owner of Malvern Manor, who was like, oh yeah, people see like weird stuff here. And he was like, well, can I come do an investigation? The guy was like, yeah, sure. And so eventually that person who owned the property wanted to sell it and was like, hey, I'm going to sell the property. And he was like, can you just give me a couple weeks? And within a few weeks, he like figured out how to buy the property himself and was like, okay, I'll own it, you know? And he's owned it ever since. And he's done like tours and kept it as it was. And when we say that, we mean he's left everything exactly where it was. So there's furniture, belongings, all types of things. And it's very interesting. And just as a note, while he's left everything, that doesn't mean that's the only stuff that's in there. People who visit will often bring gifts for the ghost entities, whatever you would like to call them, and left it there. And so there's this mix of very old, like, clothing and furniture and an older space, right? With like new toys. And like, it's just that mix of like new and old that like that juxtaposition is a little bit unnerving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially some of the kids' spaces. You know,
Yeah.
like the dollhouse and the coloring books and then like the older furniture.
Yes. And before we get into too much more about the ghosties and the activity itself, Amanda, walking into Malvern Manor, what were your initial impressions and thoughts?
So like from the outside, I think it was the same as like, it looks like an unassuming big building, right? Other than its big,
Malvern Manor sign. Yeah.
yeah, the sign, you're like, okay. But when you walk in, it's a whole different world. Like you walk in and there's old wheelchairs in the room that like greets you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, like he left everything. Because the way that we talked about it before, the way that we read it online, we thought that, yeah, he left the stuff, but like he cleaned and like changed things around a little bit. No, he left it where it was at. Everything is as it was, except for like his office.
Mm-hmm. Which is also very cool.
Yeah, yeah. But it was really like it felt heavy when you entered, and then you kind of got different feelings in the different rooms you were in.
Yes.
Like as you visited patient rooms, and even before he'd be able to open his mouth, we'd be like, ugh, at some of them. Like I think you, Nora, and I all had done different like feelings before he even had the chance to say who lived in there.
Yes. And as part of I was taking notes as we were going to our various haunted places. And one of the things I was trying to be very diligent about is when we would go into a new space, I would say, what are your impressions to Amanda and Nora and myself? Or if I didn't have time to write everyone's down, I would sometimes just write my own. Because if he was in the middle of talking, wasn't going to be like, shut up, Josh. We need to do a feelings check, you know? But yes, I agree that it did feel heavy and that it did change based on where you were. I would also say, in addition to heavy, it also felt crowded.
Yes.
This is the point of the episode where I tell you that Moo is snoring, except she's not snoring. She's doing an old dog mouth next to me, and then she was circling in her bed. So I'm sorry if you heard that. She'll probably snore in a few minutes when she goes back to sleep. And you might hear birds in the background. She was like, I'm also going to shake my head and make collar sounds. So put that in there too. But what I was saying before that was that it felt crowded.
Even though it's so big. And it was just us four.
So big. Yes. And you felt tiny.
Yes.
Like you ever like walk in a stadium on like the field and like all of the stands are near you. And did you know what I'm talking about? Like that feeling of being like a person in a massive space. It felt that way, even though the sections are more or less kind of cordoned off. Like it's not like it's a big open estate. It's like corridors and rooms and things like that. But it somehow felt like everything could see you. Does that make sense?
You couldn't see anything.
Yes. Like everything could see you, even if you couldn't look back. And like we'll talk later about like the idea of just feeling seen generally. But I just thought that was interesting, that like the idea of just feeling so overwhelmingly seen there.
Agreed.
And there was also like periods of time where I didn't feel anything, which was also equally as unnerving, was like a palpable absence of heaviness in certain spots. And then it would come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like the moment you walked through that doorway to a room, it could change dramatically.
Yes. Even within a room, it would change dramatically for me, because like some of the closets, nothing in the room, but the closet, no. Like, but anyway.
Right. And one of the interesting things that Josh shared with us is that the activity throughout the house doesn't seem to have a catalyst. So it'll happen at night. It'll happen during the day. It'll happen when it's raining or when it's sunny, full moons, crescent moons, anything you can think of. There's no rhyme or reason why it happens one particular time versus another.
I love that because the building is owned by someone who does paranormal investigation, you can get these type of nerdy metrics of like, okay, how much stuff is happening when it rains? How much stuff is happening when it's not raining, right? Like that kind of stuff that's only something that you can get if somebody is doing investigations enough where they can come up with reliable data.
Right. And so we're going to go into a couple of the specific people and things that we've talked about and elaborate a bit. In our original episode, we had talked about a little girl named Inez, and it was thought that she had died there by, some say accidentally, some say not, hanging herself. And that there were people that had reported paranormal activity that was suspected to be her in that room. Interestingly, we learned with Josh that didn't even happen at Malvern Manor, but in a home nearby.
What I loved was that when he was telling us that, he like told the story and we're like nodding, like, yes, we remember this. And then he was like, and it didn't happen here. And we were like, like it was like great storytelling, but also like we were shocked. Like, oh, how interesting that it was attributed to here rather than it being someplace else. Not that like ghosts can't travel, but just interesting.
Right. It was close by, he said. But I really liked, too, that he didn't take all these, like, random stories and just be like, okay, here's the story. Each individual story, he is researching. He's going through records. He's going through, wasn't it, like, city records or something to see where she actually died?
Yes.
So he's doing, like, insane research and being able to find more facts out and, change a little bit. But, like, that story is true. It did happen, but it just didn't happen on their property.
And I think it's just another example of like the responsibility and accountability he feels for his ghost babies. Like he's accountable for them. Like he wants to know their stories, not just be like, "Ooh, prove to me that ghosts are real," right? Like let me make money off of you. It's like, no, he wants to like know the entities there.
No, understand it, help them.
Also, just what an amazing opportunity to do, right?
Yeah.
To be able to like do that is like your job. What a dream.
Right? It's probably the coolest job I think we've ever found. And so we're going to talk a bit more broadly on some of the ghosts because we want you to visit. We want you to do a tour with Josh and learn, because even what we say today, he might find new records tomorrow.
Yeah.
And be able to add to it and add to another room. Maybe there was a different patient that lived there before the patient he's already researched, right? He's learning as he's going. So we're going to do broad strokes over everything and just talk about our experiences and what we've learned. We want you to visit. And if you do visit or if you have visited, we want to know about that too.
Yes, please do. And also just like our ghost tour at the Elms, the person who did it was like amazing and loved it and was like a place where he's worked for years and it was like his passion, right? Very clearly.
Yeah.
I would say like the difference in Josh is that like his full-time job is that he can do this, and just getting a ghost tour from somebody with that level of like passion, it's a wholly different thing. And it's like $10, the best $10 I've ever spent in my life.
Yeah. And just, I mean, again, I know we went after hours and he stayed to show us around, but like the level of ghost tour that we were given is probably the best ghost tour I've had because of how much he cares about his ghosts. It was like different level, I guess.
I feel like I often, on a general ghost tour, you hear a lot about the history of a building in the area. And I love history and I want to hear about it. But sometimes people will focus more on the history components to beef up a ghost tour. And here it's not that. It's just like tons of ghosts.
Yeah. So hopefully next time we're in the area, we can stay and have an investigation there, because I like the feelings that we got during the day. I'm actually a little like, ugh, I want to do it, but I'm also very nervous to do it at night.
I am terrified.
Particularly one place that we're going to talk about. But let's talk about one of the ghosts. His name is Hank. And all of Hank's clothes are still in his room. Josh even said, like, you can look at them, you can put them on if you dare. And we're like, what?
I was like, I will not be doing that.
No, thank you. But he also showed us that there's a drawer full of his fingernails. Like Hank's fingernails are still in a drawer in that room.
Hank.
And Josh also shared with us that Hank was not a fan of women. He didn't like women, doesn't like women, but he seemed to be okay when Stormy Daniels visited Malvern Manor.
The most random part of this, I think, was that I was like, okay.
They have a picture of her in Hank's room.
I mean, clearly he was a fan, so like, let him have some joy, and fingernails, I guess. So this next situation, ghosty entity situation thing, we did mention, but we have some more information, so we want to reshare. So there were two patients that lived in rooms that were across the hall from one another. And Josh said that there were over 150 reports of the man in room 17 sexually assaulting the patient in the room across the hall. I'm pretty sure that the room across the hall was 18, but it could have been 16. We're going to say it's 18 for the purposes of this. So our immediate reaction to that 150 number, right, was why would you leave these patients so close to one another if this was happening, right? Likely, listener, that's your reaction, is like, why the fuck would you not do something to change this? So Josh told us about an investigation that someone had while they were there, and they were talking to the entity in room 18 using a spirit box. And from what I remember, they were asking about the situation between the ghost in 18 and the person in 17. And the spirit box told them that never happened. I loved him. Oh, and I got chills when he said it.
I got chills again.
And it also just broke my heart, right? Yeah, I got chills now too. Josh said that he speculates that the two of them may have been in a relationship and that the staff had to report that something happened because they found them in the room together. But that's why they didn't move them, because they knew it was consensual and that like they had to put something down on their records, but that didn't mean they had to change anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk more about this room later on. We also went up into the attic, which is a narrow walk up and like sideways scooting up. But up there, folks leave booze and cigarettes for the ghosty entity that's up there per its own request.
Yes.
Which seems to have made it happy.
When we were walking up the narrow steps up to like the little attic-y area, my first thought was like, okay, this feels weird up here. I don't think it feels like scary, but it felt weird. And the only thought I had was like, if something really does frighten me enough to want to leave, I cannot get down these steps that fast, or I will die trying to get down these steps fast. There is no in between.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you felt that way, like you were going to be trapped.
See, I didn't, because he was talking about how like there's a generally unwelcoming vibe up there, I would say, but it kind of had this like homey feel to it.
It wasn't scary. And
Yeah.
I'm happy that it wasn't. But the moment when I'm walking up the steps is when I was like, if there is something crazy up here, I can't get down these that fast because they're so narrow and they're like big steps, but they're tiny. Like you have to like walk kind of like shimmy to go up them. But that was my thought. I just remember that.
I didn't even get there because I was too busy being humbled by like having to walk sideways up a stairwell. Like I was like, that did not feel good, which no one's fault, right? It is what it is. But I was just like, I don't want to think about that staircase because it didn't make me feel nice. So like my brain just stopped existing. Like I was like, I'm exploring this attic. There are also reports of what may be the nurses saying things like, go to bed during the investigations, which you know how I feel about a ghost profession. You don't have to do this anymore.
No.
No one's sleeping there.
But I will say around the like nurses station that we walked by, it felt like the nurses were there. You know, like when you go to a hospital and you're visiting someone and you're like, I'm okay to be here, but you feel like the nurses are like, why are you here? Like,
yeah, you're like, I'm like, you feel like
vibe.
someone's going to yell at you, even though like you have a valid reason, but like, you know that only some people can be in the area. And you're like, I'm one of the people.
Yes.
Yes. I know that like a very distinct uncomfortability that you feel in that situation when you're like, I promise I'm okay. Like, don't yell at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That happened while going by that nurses station.
Yeah.
And when I say nurses station, like it was still kind of like a functioning nurses station. Like it still had some of the names in the cubbies.
Mm-hmm. And also, Josh had mentioned that he interviewed the nurses that had worked there.
I loved that.
And like he could ask, because the names were like on the cubbies and stuff, he could ask about like particular people. I don't know how much they share with him, but like I just thought that was interesting that he could connect with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the next spirit we're going to talk about is Rebecca. And when she was at Malvern, she was a woman in her mid-30s who had been dropped off by her husband. It's thought that she had been sexually abused prior to being dropped off, and she didn't really respond well to medication. And she would do things like pull her hair out. And typically, when women visit Malvern Manor, they usually are the ones that have experiences with Rebecca more than men. But I think she's taken a liking to Josh.
Yes, I vaguely recall him being like, we're good, but most of the time she doesn't like men.
Right, right. And just to note, we all felt a heaviness in the room the moment we walked in.
Mm-hmm.
And I said I felt kind of like sad. Like it's heavy and sad in here. What'd you feel?
I felt like I was being drawn in, but then when I was in there, I felt unwelcome.
Interesting.
The idea of like wanting to be seen but not perceived, like that's kind of like the pull I felt.
Okay. And then we asked Nora too, and she gave us her input on a couple of different places, but she said this one, she didn't really like it. She just didn't feel like she wanted to be in there.
Fair.
Yeah. Another area inside Malvern Manor that we actually didn't even like discuss or see anything about is the kitchen. So it's still like a big kitchen because they had to be able to serve all of the patients, right? So it's pretty big. It's like restaurant kitchen in a way, like huge. And Josh was telling us about how the kitchen cabinets bang open and shut, and so do the drawers.
what he was telling us is he was looking at the file from Inez's death. And in her file, it said that she killed herself. And he said something to the effect of like, Jesus fucking Christ, Inez, you killed yourself, to himself, right? But out loud. And then he started hearing banging in the kitchen, like the cabinet door is slamming. And he's like, I guess they just didn't like what I had to say, or maybe they were just agreeing. And I was like, could it be that you took the Lord's name in vain? Because we're in fucking Iowa, right? Like, we're in Iowa, and like, presumably some of these ghosts would be religious and would not be happy about someone taking the Lord's name in vain. We then had a lovely discussion about like different types of debauchery that you could do to test whether the ghosts have delicate sensibilities. That is the way that we will couch that here. But I'm intrigued to see like if that's a thing that he encounters, that they don't like things that would offend delicate sensibilities.
Right. We didn't see any of that happen while we were there, but he said, you know, it's loud when it happens, but it doesn't scare him. It doesn't feel scary. And like when we were in the kitchen, I never got any like bad vibes in the kitchen at all.
Mm-mm.
I felt like someone was like standing in the doorway a lot, but nothing like negative.
Yeah, I did recall that the counter was massive, and I remember thinking, you could make so many peanut butter and jellies on this counter, like infinite peanut butter and jellies, like dozens.
So we all want a giant counter to make peanut butter and jellies. So another just really interesting thing that we learned is that Josh and some of the other investigators that he works with may have created a tulpa.
The level of excitement I had when he was talking about this.
Oh, she was like giddy.
I like lost my fucking mind and just so joyous. And this was after we'd already done our tulpa episode. So just chef's kiss.
I think you yelled out, you're like, do you mean a tulpa?
I did. Of course I did. Of course I did. I don't have the ability to like hold back my thoughts at any given fucking moment if they're too joyous.
It was so good though. But we're not going to say anything else about this because I love the thought of a tulpa being there. I think everyone should go visit Malvern Manor and take a tour.
I do too. And tell us all of your experiences.
Everyone in the world. Share everything.
Like we said before, earlier today, in our previous episode, we got to Malvern from its connection to Villisca. So we asked Josh whether he thought that it was possible that the ghosts or entities were traveling back and forth between Villisca and Malvern. And he said it was possible. We'll talk more at the end about Amanda and I's thoughts on it. But it's important to note that maybe we figured out how they would be traveling back and forth. We had told Josh that we were going to Villisca, and he asked us if we could bring something to Johnny, who operates the Moore family home in Villisca. We often call it Villisca, but it is the Moore family home in Villisca. So, of course, like, I was immediately like, oh, are you going to give us like a box of ghosts? You know, like, do you have a box of ghosts for us to carry? And then he produces something so much worse than a box of ghosts. A doll. And he says something like, this little whore, and like pulls up this disheveled doll.
By its hair?
By its hair. And her name was Patty. Now, if you've listened to True Creeps, you've probably heard that I don't like dolls. That Ben and I, my husband, we have a contract in place for no haunted dolls to come into this house. And I mean it thoroughly. Like, I'm anti-haunted doll. Anti-doll.
Yeah.
So this man produces this doll and is like, will you drive almost an hour with this doll in the car? Right? And I'm like, how are we going to say no?
But you can't say no.
No, you couldn't say no.
He's so nice.
He's so nice. And also, like, Patty needed some girl time, if I'm being honest.
She did desperately.
So we said yes. Actually, and I think I was the person who was like, sure.
Well, I looked at Lindsay at first because I was like, I'm okay to say yes. But like, Lindsay's the one that's like, no dolls. And she's like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, I had to like look at her twice. I'm like, are you okay? Are you possessed?
You were like, where's Lindsay's in one of these rooms now? This is someone new.
Who are you?
Right. Patty had good vibes about her, though.
She really did. I loved Patty. But yeah, I've never been more surprised by Lindsay.
Yeah.
That she was like immediately okay with putting a fucking doll in the car and traveling with it.
It's important to note that Patty travels often. Like, she goes back and forth.
Yes.
Because Johnny and Josh ask visitors to take her back and forth between the locations. So when I'm like, this is how they're traveling. Maybe they're traveling in Patty. Like, Patty's like, I'm going back and forth.
But whoever was with Patty at that moment was fine.
Patty loved her. Great. A treasure. A delight. Again, her hair had been chopped off in pieces. Like, she had like not a mullet, but like most of her hair chopped off, and then just a long piece.
Imagine if you were to put your hair in a ponytail and then take scissors all around the crown of your head and just chop and take out the pieces that fell, and then there's still the middle part with the ponytail. That was Patty.
That is what Patty was.
With a rubber band, too. Not even like a real hair tie. It was a rubber band.
I know. That was also perhaps one of the most egregious portions of this. And so
anyone with hair knows.
Yeah. I kept then like joking that like she was on a hashtag girls trip because like she needed it. Like she needed some girl time. Like she desperately needed it. She sat in the back with Amanda, who's going to now tell you about, honestly, the like Princess Diaries style glow up that Patty had.
Well, I had an hour to kill, right? Between Malvern and Villisca. And so I was like, what can I do to help poor Patty? Like, first, we need to get rid of this rubber band. Because if anyone's ever taken a rubber band out of their hair, it hurts.
It's not good. It's not good.
It's not great. So I luckily had some of my stuff because, you know, we were staying there. So I had some of my stuff with me. And so I took out the horrific rubber band and tried to do kind of a messy bun with what was left of her hair. And then I pinned all of the individual pieces of her hair that had been chopped.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the way there, we're like, we should get her a new outfit. We should get her new things.
We really wanted to.
So we tried to find a place, and there's only like one store between that would even potentially sell it. It did not, but it did have a cute headband. And it actually was a 3-pack of headbands, so I still have matching headbands with Patty in different colors.
You and Patty, best friends.
But I got her a headband. I put a True Creep sticker in, like, it's like not a pocket, but like a little thing on her dress. And she became one of us. She's part of True Creeps now, forever.
We also have plans to send her like a little care package of perhaps like a new dress, a True Creeps onesie, maybe a little tutu, maybe some socks.
Oh, yeah.
Some hair clips to go in, maybe some sunnies.
We did what we could do in an hour.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of time. It was like Project Runway, but while driving.
And we made the most ridiculous videos.
When you have to deal with the whole thing. Yeah, Amanda took like she has like a whole bunch of like Snapchat photos of her and Patty. It was beautiful. Nora took the world's prettiest candid photo while driving and making a turn with Patty. There's a lot of it. We'll put all of it on our social media because it's a fun time. But yeah.
And Patty needs the world to know she exists.
Patty does. She does. She's earned it.
But what a great girls trip with Patty. Like Josh and Johnny. If we're ever in town again, we would love to be able to babysit and take her to one of the locations between the two buildings again.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, we're her aunts now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Decided. And
yeah.
She agreed.
Yeah. Like, and not just her aunts, but like her favorite aunts. Anywho.
So as we're walking around, each of us kind of took a place inside Malvern Manor to be like the one that resonated with us the most or like scared us the most, whatever. And for me, I would say it was the Shadow Man hallway. That's what we called it, I think, in our original episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's located on the bottom floor, and it's just this long hallway.
So the way that it's formulated is when you first walk in, you're going to go through like a series of doors and halls and stuff. You go down a hallway that has a relatively reasonable amount of natural light. And as you get closer to where there's a T at the end, it gets darker and darker and darker.
Mm-hmm.
Inexplicably dark. But so at the T, if you're looking to the right, that's where the nurse's station is.
Yes.
But then at the T at the top of it, at the left part of the T, there's like a few rooms. And then the right side of the T is much longer. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. So that area, like we said in our episode, that a lot of people feel things on that area, and like they are absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that area, along with the nurse's station, was like the most active for me, where I was like, I feel like someone is staring at me. No matter what direction I am facing, I feel like someone is behind me at all times. And Nora actually said the same thing, as far as that was the scariest area of the building for her. Now, a little bit more to emphasize the story about that area. Josh told us that the Shadow Man will basically chase people to the end of the hall, sometimes all the way to the kitchen.
Which is far.
It is far.
It's like, I would imagine at least 300 feet. Like, it's not like, oh, it's around the corner.
Right, right. And it's important to note that that's not a straight shot. And most people typically like hang a right when they're running, and it keeps up with them. And the thing that I think freaked me out the most, because it is a dark hallway, even during the day, we were there midday, or we were there during the day, afternoon. It's still very bright, but down that hallway is incredibly dark.
Yeah.
And the way that Josh described it is he's like, you can be in pitch black, right? No lights on, middle of the night, everything's pitch black, and something will be darker than the pitch black that you can see coming at you.
I don't think I have the courage to be there in a pitch black space, though. Like anywhere in Malvern, honestly.
Mm-mm.
Honestly, I don't even like to be in pitch black in my own home. I'm a scaredy cat.
But he has been chased by it several times from what he told us.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned that the story of that person is that it was a patient, and that he would like to scare the nurses, and that he would chase them in a similar route. And then once they got into the kitchen, he'd stop. Like, he never hurt them. He never actually did anything. He just liked to scare them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could potentially be what people are seeing. And many people, I guess, have told Josh, like, something was behind me. Something was chasing after me. And so, like we didn't have that, at least happen to us. But also we were in a big group of 4 traveling around together. But I did feel like something was just staring at me no matter what direction I turned in that area. It's just unsettling.
Yes. I would also wonder if, I mean, we were there for a very short period of time. People who are there for an investigation are often like talking to and like goading like the different entities into doing actions. We were more like there observing, not so much interacting for the most part. And so like, I don't think that we really experienced much because of that.
Right. I think a few times when like we'd leave a room, like if I was last, I'd say like bye with the patient's name, or like just like the I respect that you are here with me type thing.
Yeah.
But we didn't really do too much like investigating. We really just listened to some of the stories that Josh has. And also like since we've been there, he's already posted, I think, like 4 new videos.
Yeah, it's been like a month
of investigations that he's done. So he is posting a lot. There was one actually that he showed us while we were there. I don't know which video it's in or if he's still doing it or still editing or something, but there was a full-on scream.
Yes, it was chilling
when he was there alone, and we all heard it, and it like made us all like jump when he showed us the video. I'll have to email him and see which video that's in.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it was definitely that hallway, and especially that nurse's station right around the corner. Like, I felt like the nurses were just sitting there staring at me like, why are you here? Who are you visiting?
Visiting hours end at XYZ.
Yeah. You're here after hours. We closed at 3. This is after 3, you know?
Yes. That area felt like there was a presence, and I did feel watched, but I don't think it was the space that I found the most like impactful or interesting. So as a little bit of background before I explain what mine was. So when we went to Villisca, we were there with several other people outside of like the Amanda, Nora, Lindsay trio, right? And as we were talking about it, people were like, oh, we can start together and then we can split up if we want to. And so in the car, while we were on our way from Elms to Malvern, I said, hey, you know, it's not a huge space that we're going to for Villisca. I'm like, but can we all just agree that like we're going to stay together? Because I just don't think it makes sense for us to be alone at any point. 1, because like scary. But 2, because like if you're trying to like validate experiences, 3 people experiencing the same thing, it's more credible, but it's also like it's less likely to be just, oh, you were scared.
And I'm one to wander off. Like I'll wander off on my own if I feel something, or I'm like, I'm drawn to this. I'll just wander. Like if we go to a ghost place or a scary, spooky place, often like when we've gone to the Whaley house, I've been up there alone just because I felt like going up there, and I don't feel like telling others, but Lindsay made it a rule.
Yeah, I was like, well, it's also like, I just feel like safety wise, it makes the most sense. And like, we weren't really doing investigations at Malvern. We were just doing it at Villisca. So Malvern was kind of like a stop, a tour. And so we had this conversation. I felt very strongly, right, that it was like what we should do. So it's so strange that while we were at Malvern, I feel this incredible urge / like being drawn to do something by myself there, especially considering like I'm pretty sure Nora felt what we felt when we were like, there's stuff here.
Yes. Yes.
Stuff all around. And when you are walking through, room by room, energy changes, which means you can walk down a hallway and feel light, heaviness, fear, apprehension, just a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so strange that I'm like, I'm going to go upstairs down a hallway by myself. I'll see you guys in a bit. Before I went up there, I went to get something from Nora's car. So I had her keys. And on my way back, I had a lot of stuff in my hand. So I clipped my keys to my purse and I was like handing Amanda other stuff. And if I had had the keys in my hand, I likely would have just given them to Nora.
Right.
I probably wouldn't have just like held on to them for fun because my hands were full at the moment. But so keys clipped to my purse. I go upstairs. I have a notebook, my pens. I had a little light up cat balls with me too. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk to the entities that was in room 18 because the idea of like LGBTQI ghosts, right? Like resonates with me as a queer person. And the idea that like maybe you passed at a time when the world was not okay with you loving someone just like really hit me in my soul.
Right.
That just like, it just, even now, like it really gets me. Like throughout my life, I've been in several queer relationships and I haven't always had the ability to feel safe, being out with that relationship and / or showing like public displays of affection. And I remember the first time I saw like the younger generation being like publicly queer and showing like public displays of affection and just like that awe-inspiring joy I felt. Like I just immediately cried. I was at a mall that was near my house and like I just saw like two young guys holding hands and I like immediately cried. And so the idea that this entity exists in this space where they might not know that the world is a little bit better, it just really resonated with me. And, you know, is the world completely perfect for LGBTQIA people? No. But it is better and it is more safe. And there are places where you can exist lovingly and that you couldn't before. So I just felt so incredibly drawn to fill this entity in on all this information. I also asked Josh, like, hey, have you ever had any like LGBTQI ghost investigators, particularly gay men who have done investigations that you're aware of? And he wasn't aware of any, but I was like, I would be interested to know whether they would have different experiences.
Right.
With this particular room. But so I went upstairs. When I was in the room, like when I first walked in, like it felt heavier. I like sat down. Again, I'm by myself. I have my little notebook and I had a little cat ball next to me. And I like introduced myself and explained why I was there and then had like a lovely little discussion with an empty room, perhaps, or with a room with an active listening ghost. I don't know. And like filled them in on what was going on. And so I was like, hey, if you want to light up a cat ball to show me that you're here, you can. Nothing. I wasn't too surprised by that because I also like wasn't there necessarily to be like, prove your existence. I was truly there to be like, I have information for you. That was my purpose, right? Was to do that. And so my thinking was like, I'll interact if there's questions, you know, like,
yeah.
And so like, not surprised that like the cat ball didn't light up, but like I'm sitting there for a little while and like the energy in the room, like the way it feels suddenly feels a lot heavier and not as kind of like neutral. And so I'm like, I have unease. And I'm like, okay, I'm like wrapping things up. So it's time to go anyway. And so I text Amanda that I'm coming down and then I like pack up my stuff and I like look back in the room to make sure I haven't left anything because again, like we're on our way to Villisca. Like if I lose my pens, like I don't have anything to write with. And like I don't think there was going to be stores that were like going to be open when we were getting there. So it was like, okay, I have my phone, I have my cat balls, I have like all the things I came in with and then I leave. And so we are wrapping up our time at Malvern. And so we head out soon after this and we get to the car, which I had apparently not locked. And Nora's like, can I have my keys? And I like go to unclip them from my purse. They're not there. I'm like, oh no. I thought that I had sat them down in the car somewhere, that I like unclipped them after I unlocked the car and that like they were just somewhere in the trunk.
Yeah.
We tear the trunk apart. It's not there. I empty my purse. It's not there. It's not in anybody's purse. It's not anywhere that we can find. And it's also important to note that Josh is closed for the day because he had a gig playing music at a nearby bar. So we're like, fuck, he's going to be leaving soon. We think the keys are inside. It's the only place it can be. And so we knock on like every door we can find. It takes about like 10 minutes where we're all imploding. We're going to be stuck in Malvern. Like, we're not going to be able to go to Villisca because we're going to be stuck here.
I thought the joke was we kept saying, like, we're putting Malvern on the map. We want to go to Malvern so bad, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, no, the joke's on us. Like, we are actually going to be stuck in Malvern. We're going to become Malvern. Like, we're going to have
Malvern.
to find homes and live here.
Yeah, this is who we are now.
We are Malvern.
Eventually, Josh hears our knocking. And we're like, hey, we explain it. And he's like, okay, yeah, you head on up. And so we go upstairs. And Nora and I went up, and they were just sitting on the floor where I had been sitting. But I like distinctively remember looking back in the room to see if I had left something, and I had not.
It's so weird.
So just interesting that like I vividly remember clipping them on, and I remember looking back to see if there was something on the floor, because I leave stuff all the time, right? Like, you're busy, you're trying to get stuff together. And I was like, right. That's just very weird that happened. Malvern was like, yeah, why don't you stay a while?
I know. I'm like, if we had more time, like, I would love to have stayed longer that day. I was having a great time exploring and learning. And yeah, but they're like, actually, would you stay a little longer? But we were able to successfully leave Malvern. And on the way, we stopped at the post office to mail things to our Patreon from Malvern.
We did. We were very excited about that. Yeah. We only almost forgot several times.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And all I kept thinking is, like, when the post office people open this mailbox and they see the stupid shit we're sending.
Amazing. I loved them. I thought they were great.
Oh, I loved them. Treat. But, like, imagine living in Malvern and being like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. Love it.
And speaking of which, we sent our Patreon a little gift from Malvern because, it's the greatest place on earth. And
we have some extras and we would love to send some out. So we only have some left. So if you would like a postcard, shoot us an email at truecreepspod@gmail.com with your name and mailing address, and we'll send you a postcard, but only for like the first people who send their information. So if you want one, please send one like ASAP.
Yes. We'll message you and let you know that we're sending one out, or if we already ran out.
Yes.
So that was a really fun trip to Malvern.
It was.
I can't wait to go back. I want to go back. Like, Lindsay and I almost daily have been like, so when can we go back to Malvern and Villisca? Like, when can we make this happen in our lives?
Yeah.
Because we want to go back so bad. And originally, like I said, we brought this up because there might be a connection between the two of them. And so now with like visiting both of them, what do you think, Lindsay? Is there a connection?
No.
You don't think so? Not in the way of like a murderer, but maybe Patty.
Not in the way of like a murderer, maybe Patty. I do think that it's possible that things are traveling back and forth. We'll talk more about it in our Villisca episode, like my distinct impressions and like gut feelings about what is at Villisca. It could have come from there. It could have come from Malvern. It absolutely could have come from there. I'm a believer in the idea that like maybe ghosts don't stay where they die. Maybe they don't stay where they were born. Maybe they're just wherever they are, right? Like, we've talked about a haunted doll, therefore other things could be haunted, right? Like,
yeah,
ghosts can move, perhaps. I don't know, but I don't think it's like a constant back and forth, if you will. I think that things move here and there, but I think that often when people are talking about a connection between Villisca and Malvern, they're saying, do you think that the darkness came from Malvern and went to Villisca? I think that's kind of mostly the question, in which case I do not. I think that it was at Villisca before anything happened.
I think, yeah, whatever inspired the murders was already there, pre-murders.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk more about that in our Villisca episode when that comes out, where we're still working on some of the audio for that.
Yeah. That's a bit of a bigger lift. Amanda's been doing.
We were there much longer.
Great.
Yeah,
it was, I mean, we were there overnight. So like there was a lot of time and there was a lot of content because there was a lot of us making videos.
Overnight in quotes.
Oh, quotes. We rented it overnight. We were not there all night. Do you think that it traveled?
So whoever committed the murders, because the train is so close to both of these places, is there potential that that person has gone to Malvern before? Like the place, maybe not Malvern Manor. Perhaps, like if that person did travel via train, like that is a thing that could have happened. I don't know. There's no proof one way or another. But kind of like what you said, where there's something at Villisca that predates the murders. I think that the Moore family unfortunately had another guest in their house that they did not know was there.
Yeah. I'll say more about it in our Villisca episode because I don't want to like talk too much about it now, but it just doesn't seem as simple as a person moving from one place to another. Ominous.
Yeah. So we mentioned that we went on the spooky trip, and we mentioned 3 different places that we went. And who could know why we haven't mentioned the 4th place that we made a stop at?
That's because it wasn't spooky at all. It was just a delight. And it was like beautiful and breezy and light. And I didn't pick up any spooky vibes, so I forgot about it for a second.
Right. So we've been saying spooky places. We actually stopped a couple days after Villisca at the 21C Kansas City Hotel that we talked about a little bit ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when we stopped there, the restaurant portion was not open, unfortunately, so we didn't get to see inside there. But we were able to wander around the hotel for a bit and see the art gallery, which is phenomenal, by the way.
Beautiful.
I think that same gallery will be there for a couple more months.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And I went up to a couple of the staff members and like kind of asked them, and I was like, hey, like we did an episode on this. How do you feel about the place? And the first girl's like, I did not get her name. I feel bad. We kind of talked in passing, but she was like, a lot of people tell me that it's very haunted, but I really haven't felt much. Like I really haven't experienced anything myself. Other people that work here have, but I haven't. And I was like, okay, that's fair. But it's a beautiful place. Like if you're ever in Kansas City, make a stop. You may be able to eat lunch there. I didn't think that there was anything I could eat because I eat like a 4-year-old, but I think that was the running joke as we were leaving. Lindsay and my aunt was with us at this time, and
beefy bitches.
They were looking at the menu and they're like, "Oh, Amanda, you could eat like sweet potatoes or like carrots."
Also, I think I was like, there's like a side of like frites, like the fancy.
But it's a really cool place. It's very pretty. And if you have a chance to see the art, like totally worth it. They also have this really cool penguin.
Several.
Like they have a bunch of them all over the property, and you're allowed to like move it around. And it's kind of like an art piece in itself, is that you can put this penguin wherever. When we walked up, it was like on the marquee type thing.
Yeah. You can even take it to your room, which I love that too.
Yeah. And they're like, we have trackers on them, so people can just like leave them around as long as it doesn't leave the property. That was really fun. But yeah, 21C Hotel, we didn't get to stay there. We went there at night, but as far as going during the day, no creepy vibes, but just a really cool place.
Absolutely.
But with that, we've talked a lot about Malvern's.
I just love it.
Villisca's coming next. And like Lindsay and I, just to give you a quick preview, we have talked about Villisca every day since we've left.
I've thought about Villisca every day since I left, and I am a different person having gone there.
It's like something that's just in our heads at all times now.
For better or for worse.
So it was very impactful, and we can't wait to talk about it.
Yes. And with that, have a great weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us.
Thanks for listening. And as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon.
Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch.
Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store.
We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts.
I beg of you. When you hear 10,000 squeak, when you feel 10,000 squeak, random, but are you aware that Ben is like known for his peanut butter and jelly skills?
No.
Oh, yes. His top-notch PB&Js.
How do you elevate a peanut butter and jelly?
I'm not here to tell his secrets.
Oh my gosh. I have, when we were camping, the one night, because I fucking hate camping, we made them like grilled cheese, like, like where you
that's
toast them.
Illegal.
And that was pretty good, but.
Illegal. No.
Illegal.
I actually prefer my peanut butter and jellies cold. The exact opposite.
I don't mind either way.
I don't like hot peanut butter.
I love hot peanut butter.
It's also my own like trauma. So like, I'm just not inclined to like that. But I can appreciate that other people do. I just don't want them to enjoy it near me.
Anything peanut butter.
I know.
I just love it so much. It's probably one of my favorite things.
What would you have done if like Ollie had a severe peanut allergy?
Oh man, like I would probably have to like have a monthly vacation to like a nearby hotel so I could just eat peanut butter flavored things.
So my bestie Damien, his husband, deathly peanut allergy. And Damien is very similar to you in his love of peanut items of all varieties. And so he can't eat anything, right? Because it would, like, if he kisses his husband,
Kill
he
his
could like,
husband.
yeah, like he doesn't want to, but he also like, he can't like eat it and brush his teeth. If he eats anything with peanut butter or like peanut things, he needs to like shower, wash his clothes, brush his teeth, right? Like it's a whole like decontamination process. Yeah. And Damien and I went on like a little bestie trip a few years ago. We went to Pittsburgh. Why? I don't fucking know. We were like, this is a road trippable place. Pittsburgh. Honestly, yes. Pittsburgh, not a fan of it. But one of the things that we did was we bought so much peanut butter stuff. Like, I'm talking like we went to like a Sheetz and he bought every type of peanut butter candy. Like every single one. And he was just like, I'm living my dream. And he just ate so much peanut butter. I was so happy for him. Anyway. Yeah. You're like, that sounds like a great time, just generally.
That's another added check for Damien. I'm like, we get along. We get along well over dogs already. Like, and then peanut butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho.
So I put her hair up. I make it a messy bun. That's what's in style right now. Okay. And then took the bobby pins.
Amanda, we're going to pause for a minute. No, sweetie.
What? Messy buns are fine.
They're not in style anymore, though.
What do you mean?
I mean that they're not in style anymore. They
Since
are
when?
the way of the. They are the way of the side part. It is now claw clip. Like I'm still gonna do my messy bun, but I'm just letting you know.
You literally have a side part right now.
I know I do. Like I'm gleefully like side part, middle part.
Tutorials all the time on how to get your messy bun elevated.
That doesn't mean it's in style.
Well, then why is 90% of people that I see having a messy bun in their hair?
I'm just telling you.
There's only an elite 10% of Gen Z that can tell us, no, fuck Gen Z. I can do what I want with my messy bun and my side part.
You live it, baby. I'm just letting you know that you're wrong. I agree that messy buns look gorgeous. Also because Amanda's got the most beautiful, thick fucking hair and has this like beautiful, luscious bun on top of her head. And meanwhile, I have this little like rat ball that looks sad.
It's not nice.
I can really fluff it out if I mean it, but it's just not as pretty as Amanda's. Anyway.
I do want to quickly say I look at a picture of Patty every day now because in our Discord group, our Patreon,
I completely forgot about that.
Lindsay, every time I have to tag you in something, I have to tag Patty the doll.
Yeah,
because Lindsay changed her profile to Patty the doll.
I did,
with a picture of Patty and played it off as she got possessed.
What I love about this is that I forgot about it, and Amanda's like, I look at a picture of Patty every day, and I looked at her like she was
insane,
unhinged.
I'm looking at a picture of Patty literally right now talking to you. Every time you talk, Patty lights up.
You're welcome. This is now a Patty the Doll podcast.
Can you read the quote that you said to our Discord that day? She played it off as Patty took over for Lindsay. And then she started talking nonsense in the Patreon Discord. It was so funny. It could have been exhaustion, stress, and hunger.
I love that you remember this because I do not. Okay.
At the Pizza Ranch is when it happened.
And wasn't the Pizza Ranch? Okay. True Patty, where the stories are about true and the Patty is real. That one?
Yeah.
And then Amanda does have a photo of like Patty before, like with the rubber band. And it was like, I put hashtag Missy Hair Don't Care. And then this is when I changed my name because before it was like Combat Wombat. That's my Discord name, but you don't know the numbers. But so I kept messaging Ben like with the doll because like bizarre for me, right? And so I was like, gullets are very fashionable now at like Ben. And then I added Ben and I was like, I am wife now. So good. So good.
Adventures with Patty could be our new podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, the episode art for this will have to be like featuring Patty.
Oh my gosh. Can it be the stupid video you took of me like moving Patty's head?
Yeah, where she's like shaking. Yeah, it's just like a boomerang. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
the only one moving. You and I are completely still. Gorgeous.
We're not even in it. It's just Patty.
It's just Patty. This is Patty's podcast now.